started with today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and it is not to substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. You should always speak with your physician or other healthcare professionals before doing any fasting, changing your diet in any way, taking or adjusting any medications or supplements, or adopting any treatment plan for a health problem. The use of any other products or services purchased by you as a result of this podcast does not create a healthcare provider-patient relationship between you and any of the experts affiliated with this podcast. Any information and statements regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All right, and now we'll get started with today's episode.
Hi, everyone. This is Coach Bethany. I'm back with another episode of the Fasting Method podcast, and we have a very special episode today with one of our members and a coaching client of mine named Melanie. And I want to talk to Melanie today because she's experienced great success at the fasting method, and hopefully learning about her story is helpful to others. So welcome, Melanie.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you for having me.
So Melanie, I would love to hear how you got into fasting.
Okay, so I had come across Dr. Fung's work probably about, I want to say like 7 or 8 years ago. And I cannot recall where I first heard of him, but I came across his work and it really just piqued my interest. And so probably in maybe 2016, 2017, I started sort of dabbling in fasting. I would try skipping a meal here and there. And then I just kept learning more. I would say probably in 2021 is really where I said to myself, okay, well, I want to really take this to the next level and see what I can achieve. And so at that time, I started, I think that's maybe when I got his book, The Obesity Code. And I also just started reading more and really educating myself and also putting it to practice. So that's when I started trying alternate day fasting and doing things like that.
And so what made you interested in fasting at all? What was your primary goal at the time? Let's go back to 2016, 2017, when you became aware of Dr. Fung and his work.
My primary goal was weight loss, to be pretty straightforward. It's something that I have always, I don't want to use the word struggle because I think that kind of carries a negative connotation, but pretty much my entire life since prior to adolescence, I was always one of the bigger girls amongst my peers. And so body image and weight and all of that has always been a focus of mine, I would say. And so that was really my main goal when I first started fasting.
And what had you tried prior to fasting to lose weight, if anything?
I tried counting calories, counting macros, exercising. Actually, 11 years ago, I had gastric sleeve weight loss surgery, and that actually was very successful. I had lost, all in all, in that experience, I lost 120 pounds, and I gained about half of it back by 2017 when I was starting to look at fasting. So really just your typical methods of weight loss, I guess, just counting macros and exercise. And then I guess weight loss surgery is not typical, but I also tried that.
Got it. And so you became aware of fasting and its benefits, and you realized it could be a possible solution for weight loss in 2016, 2017, began implementing some of what you had read in Dr. Fung's book in 2021. And you and I, Melanie, started working together in 2024. So can you tell me a bit about what 2021 to 2024 looked like for you?
Yes. So in 2021, when I started implementing some of the longer fasts, I had some success that year and I lost about 40 pounds during that year. So rolling into 2022, I was feeling very good about myself and good about the success I had. Around the time that it started getting sort of in the warmer months, I had lost weight. I was wearing shorts for the first time in several years. My social calendar filled up and, I was drinking and eating a lot more with my friends. And so I ended up gaining a lot of the weight back, maybe even all of it. If I think back, I think I may have gained all of it that I had lost.
That's such a common thing that I hear that people are able to hit their goal and have a lot of trouble with maintenance. So you had fasted in 2021 and part of 2022. It sounds like, and I know this from our work together, that you were following during that time mostly a low carb, high fat way of eating. And then in 2022, during the summer months, tell me what your fasting schedule looked like, if any, and also kind of how your eating changed.
Sure. So my fasting schedule probably was a little more limited. So during the summer months, I was fasting a lot less. There was still some fasting, but it was probably more like maybe once a week or so. I will say that I was drinking a lot more alcohol, which I think has a huge impact, at least for me, on weight loss and my ability to be successful or to make progress. So I was definitely drinking alcohol and even some of your higher carb alcohol, like beer, things like that. And I was my eating was just like, it was basically whatever I wanted. I mean, I was out with friends all the time and it was just whatever the group was doing, So that's how I ate.
Okay, excellent. I want to return to that, but then I want to hear what brought you to the fasting method and coaching in 2024.
Okay, so in 2024, at this point, I had gained a lot of my weight back in 2022. Probably at this point, I had gained it all back and maybe even then some. And I went on a trip to Tennessee with my family. And I decided that when I got back home, that I would start to change my diet. So I did that and I made the choice to limit alcohol, which is what it started with, because I was able to see that that was probably had the most impact on my health at the time. So I started with that. And then as I made a little bit of progress there, I was able to reflect and recognize that I would need a little bit of support. It was not coming as the fasting, I mean, was not coming as easily for me as it did in 2021. And if I think back, there was a lot of mental tug of war going on there. And so I signed up for coaching because I really needed some help to sort of sort out my thoughts and my feelings, really, about the whole process.
And what was the conflict, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh gosh. Well, I think that well, one thing I think many of us can relate to is the good or bad mentality. And so having like a one-off day really would have a bigger impact on my mental frame at that time or my emotional state of being at that time. So I think that was primarily at that time, probably the biggest struggle for me. I just wasn't as, I think my motivation wasn't up to where it was prior to that, but I think I was motivated before that because I was in the right mindset.
Yeah, what you said about the good or bad mentality, certain foods are good or bad, or certain behaviors around foods are good or bad. I've seen that be really detrimental for people, and more often than not, and this is just my anecdotal experience as a coach, more often than that, what that can lead to is sort of the equivalent of, if you're drinking a cup of coffee in the morning and you accidentally spill a little bit on your sweater, and then you just think, oh, well, my sweater's dirty now, so you just pour the cup of coffee all over your head. It's sort of like that's what people can do with eating when they think, oh no, I've ruined it. And the truth is, No foods are good or bad, and no food behaviors are good or bad. They're just probably more or less supportive for you given your goals. And the idea of perfect, quote unquote, eating behavior or perfect foods or even clean foods, I think can really mess with people's heads. And it sounds like it was creating a lot of mental noise for you. So, when you came to the fasting method in 2024, you wanted to lose weight. What was your why at the time?
Well, I feel better when I don't want to say when I weigh less because it's not really about weight, but when I'm able to move more, when I have more energy. I guess what I mean to say is the impact of the fat loss and how my body feels and how I feel mentally and emotionally in that state is really what I was seeking. Because when I had lost the 40 pounds in 2021, I really felt so good about myself. So I just wanted to feel that again and not mess it up.
I know the feeling. Okay, so now I want to get into what I bet everyone is curious about. Since starting at the fasting method, you've now, since 2024, you've lost how much weight, Melanie?
I have lost, since I started coaching with you, I've lost 61 pounds, I believe.
Amazing. And now I bet people want to hear, okay, what did you do? So let's talk about that. What worked for you?
Well, I found alternate day fasting is really, that is my fasting protocol that works well for me. It's really nice because I can tell myself if I feel hungry, I can say, oh, I'll eat tomorrow. I can eat tomorrow. It's all good. So it's easy in that light to know that it's just tomorrow I'm going to eat. With that being said, I don't really get hungry when I am consistently fasting and doing the alternate day fast. Typically, I don't get hungry at all, and they're pretty easy for me.
So, for those listening who might not know, an alternate day fast is when you fast for an entire calendar day. So, let's take an example. If you ate dinner on Sunday evening, you would fast for the rest of that evening. You would fast all day Monday, and you would wake up on Tuesday and either eat breakfast or maybe wait until lunch. And that was the majority of what Melanie did was, some 42-hour fasts. And I think, Melanie, you did a mix, if I recall, of 2 or 3 42s. And then you would also just do what we call rolling alternate day fasting, where you would truly just eat every other day.
Yes, I would say for the majority of my weight loss, I did 3 fasts per week. So maybe not eating Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But most recently, I have started to implement a rolling 42 schedule where I'm just eating every other day.
And so now I bet people are thinking, that's really impressive. I wish I could do that. What helped you be that consistent?
Okay, number one, the coaching was really important for me because to come and even just verbalize what I'm doing, whether it's working or not, and really just having that conversation with somebody allows me to keep it in perspective, allows me to keep everything in perspective. So if it's left up to me, I might, spiral into negative thinking if I've not done something that I felt I should have done, or I don't know. But that was really helpful to come and talk to somebody. There were other things though, as well. I think through the coaching, I have been able to change my mindset and really develop some healthy emotions around fasting and eating, and really just change the language to be more positive. So, like you said earlier, instead of good or bad, it's supportive or unsupportive. So, I think that's been really important for me.
So Melanie was a group coaching client. I should have mentioned that earlier. So Melanie, it sounds like just having a place to come and process out loud what you did and what worked for you, what didn't was helpful. Is there anything in terms of food? And by that, I mean specific food behaviors, a mindset around food, or specific foods themselves that were helpful to you?
Yes, absolutely. So I want to really acknowledge the mindset around food because that was huge for me. And I think along with that is came for me owning my decisions. Not to say that owning your decisions means to beat yourself up, because have definitely done that, but really just acknowledging when I chose an unsupportive food, that was a choice. And it was a choice that I made mindfully and understood the potential impact of that and acknowledged it and moved on and really just didn't hang out in that space because that really wasn't staying in that mindset or focusing on having made a choice where I could have made a different choice was not helpful. So it was really owning that choice and acknowledging it and moving on. So I would say that was big in terms of the mindset around food. Foods themselves, low carb foods work for me. Specifically, I'm finding that not just low carb, but the higher fat foods and the very minimally carb foods really are kind of what work best for me at this time. And I see the most results from following that sort of diet.
And so, what generally were you reaching for that was high in fat?
Chicken thighs. I've eaten a lot of chicken thighs. Eggs. I would make egg salad. I would make tuna salad, salmon, olives. I had a breakfast that I had probably, every eating day for months. And it was cottage cheese, eggs, olives, bacon. It was just kind of like a hodgepodge of those things in a bowl. I eat some beef, some steak. It's not something I eat very often, but I have steak. I would have taco bowls when I'd make tacos for my son and I would have a taco bowl with avocado. So foods like that.
I just want to jump in here. Melanie is an extremely consistent meal prepper. And I didn't hear you give yourself credit for that, but you were really on it when it came to making and freezing bulk meals as well. And I also, what you said about, I had a breakfast that I ate for months. I think it's really helpful for people to find default meals that they really like and that make them feel really good and really satiated and energized because life is busy. And when we're stressed out and we don't have time, it can become really easy to just eat kind of whatever is in front of us. And so having those default meals at the ready that you know are going to work for you is something that I think you've done exceptionally well.
Yes, that has been a major contributing factor to the success that I've had. I definitely have a high stress job. I have, my personal life can be a little bit stressful at times. And I find that even now, even after the success I've had, making a supportive decision after a stressful day is challenging. So it's definitely in my best interest and has worked for me to prevent myself from really having to make that choice because I've already made it when I was in a good headspace.
Excellent. So, Melanie, I know from working with you, and you mentioned a few minutes ago and your son does not eat the way you do. You have different nutritional needs. So, can you tell me how you navigated that?
Yes. So I do try to offer my son some of the foods that I eat, but usually he just outright rejects most of that. So I find that I am successful meal prepping for myself, and then I typically will cook his food on those days that I'm fasting and he's eating when I'm not eating, or when I am eating differently. And I know it's not really ideal to cook two different foods, but in my case, my meal's already prepped, so I don't really have to cook that. And then I'm really just making his food for him.
And so, do you ever find yourself being tempted by whatever you're making for him?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I definitely do. I mean, I would historically, like, I would make his food. He is an American child, so he likes chicken nuggets and tater tots. And I would just, it would be easy for me to just eat a chicken nugget or a tater tot as I'm preparing his food. And that's something that I've consciously decided not to do in those situations as much as possible. I'm not perfect, but I try to keep what I've decided to do at the forefront of my mind.
So you decide ahead of time before you are even exposed to anything you're making for him.
Yes, yes. And then I might even have some internal dialogue with myself while I'm cooking. And then I just remind myself of what I really want.
Yes, your why.
Yes.
And so I want to ask you, I said I would circle back to this when we started. You mentioned going out to social events. And I know from working with you that you're still quite social. It's so interesting because you mentioned that part of your weight gain or weight regain in 2022 was due to going out, being really social, and just kind of going with the group. Whatever they're having, I'm having. What, if anything, has changed about how you interact in a social setting now?
A lot. Well, it felt like a lot, but I'll say it actually has minimal impact. I mean, less impact than I think I was concerned about before. But really, I just tell my friends I have a goal. That's my kind of go-to saying to them. And they seem to understand that. So I'll say, oh, I'm not having a cocktail. I have a goal that I'm working on. And I sort of just leave it at that. They might ask for information and I'll share, but that is kind of my default statement to my friends. I have a goal.
And so, what were you worried about before you kind of worked yourself up to saying that?
Well, okay, it was a couple things. Number one, I had the fear of missing out for sure. I mean, that was a big thing. Number two, I don't think I expected them to pressure me really, but I think I was a little bit afraid of the conversation leading to having to answer questions about fasting, which I love fasting. I know it's good for me, but having those conversations can be difficult sometimes with people who don't fast because they just may not want to understand or really, they may question or they may have their own opinions. And sometimes that can sort of, in my experience, kind of impact the way that I'm thinking or feeling about something. And so I just try to avoid the topic.
So you just say, I have a goal and I'm not going to have this tonight.
Yes. And they've been really supportive.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, those are true friends. When they say, oh, great, you have a goal, cool. We'll just accept that and move on. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast today, Melanie. And it's been so wonderful working with you and so much fun to watch just how consistent you've been and how passionate you've been about your own transformation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, all. Until next time.